Are you ready to go behind the scenes and learn what it really takes to create consistent sales each and every month with your handmade small business? Join me, Monica Little, self-taught multiple six-figure small business owner and your product business coach, as I give you the insight and inspiration on how to better run your business and increase your sales in ways that you may not have even been aware of, so that your business can truly become what you knew it could be back when you first started. Learn how to let go of perfection, overcome the fear of failure that is holding you back, and finally start taking action so that you walk away feeling like you've cracked the code on how to run a successful small business. You're listening to the Product Biz Podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 30 of the Product Biz Podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to Kristin Vaughn from Hillside Studio. Kristin is an amazing polymer clay business owner, and I want you to pause this episode right now and go to her Instagram account. It's Shop Hillside Studio, and see the amazing pieces that she makes. But not only is she an amazing polymer clay small business owner, but she's also an Instagram and TikTok genius. She has almost 200,000 followers on Instagram and almost 300,000 followers on TikTok. And this is one of the main ways that she gets in front of new people to purchase her products. So today we're going to dive into what she uses on Instagram to reach more people, what her strategy is on Instagram, how she views Instagram. And I am just so excited for this episode because if you've been listening to the Product Biz Podcast for a while, then you'll start to hear some similar things that we've talked about before, specifically coming from Kristin. And it's always so amazing to get another perspective, another business owner who's absolutely crushing it, to get their view on how they grow their business, how they look at Instagram, how their mental mindset is around growing their business. And it's such a refreshing, awesome conversation. I'm so excited to introduce you to Kristin from Hillside Studio. So without any further ado, let's get into today's episode. Well, welcome, Kristin, to the Product Biz Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today to talk about polymer clay, to talk about Instagram, TikTok, spirituality in your business, all of these amazing topics. So welcome, and thank you so much for joining me here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Monica. I'm excited.
Awesome. So I want to just right off the bat get to know a little bit more about you, so everyone listening can hear more about your awesome experience, your polymer clay business. So bring us up to speed. I know you have a polymer clay earring jewelry business, but tell us really, how did you get started and what's your passion behind polymer clay?
So I started my business a little over 7 years ago, and I kind of just picked it up as something to do with my hand, something to keep me busy. I had been divorced, and I was and then had gotten remarried, and I was having a bit of a hard time on the times when I didn't have my kids. And so it was kind of something to just keep me occupied and busy so that I didn't sit there and think about it. And I quickly realized that I missed having like that creative thing in my life, because I've always been a creative person. I've always had different endeavors throughout my life. And for several years prior to me picking up polymer clay again, like I hadn't really done anything creative. So it was a nice outlet. I had made a ton of necklaces and earrings, and I realized I can never wear all of these. And a friend of mine had opened up her own Etsy shop. And so I decided, hey, I'm just going to put these things on Etsy and see what happens. And it just has grown slowly at times and quickly at times in the last 7.5 years. And it's just been like an amazing ride.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much. And I think I hear that such a common theme with people in terms of just looking for that creative outlet and having something to actually do that's either on the flip side of having a very left-brained corporate job and needing something to do, if that's the right terminology, right? Left brain is the more analytical one, I think, and right brain is more creative. Yeah, I could be totally wrong, but whatever side it is. But hearing that people just need something more creative and having something to do in like the free time, or if they're going through situations, or really just trying to find a way to be more present different. So I find that to be such a common piece of feedback when I ask people how they get started. At what point did this really click for you that like, holy crap, this is a business. This is something that I can do full time, because you are doing this full time now, but as of more of a recent transition, right?
Yeah. So, well, it's been about, let me think, about a year and a half or so I've been doing this full time. And, right from the start, it really grew more quickly than I had imagined. It wasn't anywhere that could have sustained me. I think I had a very good corporate job too. So I think it probably took me longer than the average person to quit, because I was trying to make all that income back up, which, it was a very well paying job. So that was like more difficult to do. But I quickly realized like, oh, maybe you can do something with art or something with this full time. It took me a bit, I think, to get up to that point, about 5 years or so. But I slowly built it on the side, as much as I could, until that point. And I think the main thing that I realized was I had sort of entered this world that I didn't know anything about. And that was people who were making good livings selling their handmade items. And I didn't know that was possible. I think when I was a kid, it was all I ever wanted to be was an artist. And all I ever heard was artists don't make any money. So I think I very quickly took that on as my own and never thought I could ever do anything with it. So as it grew for me, I realized more and more and more was possible. So that is something I'm actually super passionate about, is helping people realize that they can have amazing lives. And it's not just scraping by either. It's having a really abundant, amazing life, like selling your art to the world.
Yeah, and that's such a beautiful testament too of hearing more about your journey of being in that corporate office and working towards it and having that transition of actually believing that it can be something that now sustains you full time, which is so awesome. I know a lot of people in my programs and just creatives that I talk to, small business owners that I talk to, that's their ultimate end goal, is to leave their full-time job so they can do what they love to do every single day. So it's awesome to have you on here, someone who's been through that too, and to see the amazing success that you're having. Because, not to be remiss, but I know you have almost 200,000 followers on Instagram, almost 300,000 followers on TikTok. So this whole polymer clay social media thing is obviously working out awesome for you, which is so exciting to see. I would love to know, what really was the catapult, or how did you grow your audience on Instagram and TikTok? If they're the same strategies, if they're different, what really got you to reach that level of success on those platforms?
Well, I think from the start, I've always loved sharing my process. And even when Instagram was just pictures, I would really share as much as I could behind the scenes and kind of what goes into what I do. And as Instagram had introduced a little bit more video, I was jumping on that as much as I could, because I loved the idea of sharing the process. And part of it was also that people had no idea how long and how detailed and how entailed the process was. And so when they'd see that, it was a no-brainer, my prices. But before they knew that, they really were like, oh my gosh, that seems like kind of a lot for some earrings, right? So it was a way of just sharing what I did and also kind of justifying my prices. And so I think I was an early adopter of video, and I think that really propelled me, because when my kids were talking about TikTok and I just thought it was, teenagers dancing, they would send me TikToks that were funny or creative, or I learned this on TikTok, and I was like, oh, maybe I should actually see what this is all about. And I joined TikTok, and the creativeness of people on that app, how they edit videos and how they share things and just how funny people are, I really kind of fell in love with it. And I thought, man, I should be using this for my business. And everything kind of took off for me from there. I quickly gained, I mean, I guess for 2 months, I was pretty much posting to nobody. But after only about 2 months, like things really took off for me. And my videos just continued to get better and better. And my editing skills got better. And when Instagram introduced Reels, I mean, it was just easy for me to kind of create for both places. So I think the video, being an early adopter of that, was really, really helpful in my business kind of taking off.
Yeah, and there's three things that you said that I wrote down as you were saying it, because I think they're such a true testament, not only to success on like Instagram and success on TikTok, but also just in business in general, right? You mentioned jumping on it right away. As soon as like Instagram Reels and TikTok came about, you were one of the first people to be doing that. And that's so important because I think so many people like wait, and I'm speaking from my own experience because I'm still not on TikTok, even though I like hear all the awesome things. But if you actually get on there right when it's being available, like that's such an awesome way to leverage it. And then you also mentioned educating on polymer clay. So I absolutely love that. Just hearing that the way that you grew was just sharing sharing behind the scenes and the creative process and how it starts and how it finishes. And ever since I started following you on social media a couple weeks ago when we met in person in Phoenix, I'm like captivated by that content. It's like so much fun to see you mixing the polymer clay and cutting it and shaping it and all the intricacies that really go into it. So I absolutely love how you mentioned that. Is that one of the main ways that you utilize the platform? Is it simply educating on polymer clay, showing the different ways that you make the earrings from start to finish? Is that most of what your strategy is in terms of the videos that you share on TikTok and Instagram?
Right now, yeah. I think over the years, I've gone through different iterations of the things I like to share. Like before I was really into video, I shared a lot about like earrings representing your style and you and making you feel more confident, and here's how you can wear them and things like that. So it was a lot of like confidence and style tips type of things, especially in stories. It was a really good way to do that with people on a more like intimate basis. So I love using stories in that sense of like having a relationship with your customer, your followers. And I also think that maybe like slightly off topic, but on the same topic is I have always looked at Instagram or social media as like this like incredible free tool that we have at our disposal to use. And it just makes the barrier of entry for small businesses like so easy now, because you can just get on Instagram and like start a business and gain customers. Whereas, 40 years ago, you'd put ads and things and like it was a whole different ball game, right? And so as much as it can be annoying or frustrating or whatever when the algorithm changes or they add new features and they do all these things and it's changing all the time, I've really embraced that. And I'm so grateful for it, because if it weren't for Instagram, my business would not be what it is. I probably wouldn't have a business. Like, I'm just so grateful for it. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that I have been really successful on these platforms with my attitude for it, because I don't have any animosity when they change things. I'm just like, oh, well, I guess this is what I'm doing now. Or if I don't want to do it, I don't do it, but I think just using the tools that you have and being grateful that they're free is just like half the battle.
Yep, I 100% agree with you. And when we met in Phoenix and you said that to me, that's when I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get her on the podcast, because that is such a refreshing view on Instagram that so many people don't have. So many people like hate the platform, hate the algorithm, hate the changes, get really frustrated by it. And exactly like you said, we can totally acknowledge that and be like, yeah, you know what? This change kind of sucks. Now I have to learn something new. Now I have to learn TikTok, like all these social media things going on. But I love, love, love your view on it. And yeah, this is a free platform. I can reach 200,000 people and more and have it grow and have it really propel my business forward to the point that we can leave our full-time jobs and actually monetize and make money and live the lifestyle that we want. So I appreciate your view on Instagram so much, because I think how you show up for a platform and the attention that you have about a platform is going to dictate your results, right? If you show up on Instagram and you're like, I hate Instagram, this is miserable, obviously the content that that person may share on Instagram isn't going to be their best content because they don't even think it's going to work anyways. So talk me through a little bit more on your mindset about Instagram. And specifically, one of the things that you said earlier is you felt like you were posting to nobody for 2 months before it really took off. So, in that time period, when you felt like you were posting to nobody, what did you do to keep your attitude kind of high and still excited to be posting on platforms that maybe didn't have the traction that you wanted just yet?
Well, I think that, and it can be hard at times. Like, I'm not perfect at it, but like, you have to detach yourself from like the result in everything, right? Like, you are not your sales, you are not your likes, you are not your engagement. Like, that is not you. So being able to like separate you from the results that you're getting is key, because then you can look at those results as data to help you like move forward. So when I would post and they wouldn't go anywhere, I'm just like, well, the right people aren't seeing it yet, right? So like, how do I get the right people to see it? And with TikTok, it can be a little frustrating at first, especially because you're kind of almost just like stuck for a while, and you're at the mercy of the algorithm. And the algorithm, people want to talk trash about the Instagram algorithm, but the TikTok algorithm is just a crapshoot. I'll be honest. There are things that you can do to maximize your luck in getting pushed out further. But once you get pushed out farther once, like, you'll just keep gaining traction and momentum from there. So you have to keep posting. Also, what's super important is that people tend to, especially on TikTok and now with Reels, people really want to go viral. And there's all this talk about going viral, but going viral is not the answer. It can certainly help. It can certainly help. But if you go viral for something that's not you and not your brand, then what's the point? Because people are going to go to your page and you're like, oh, she makes earrings. She doesn't do this funny cooking show. She did this to you, or whatever it is. Not saying that you can't add things that are different than just your specific media, but like, you have to have something for them to go back to. So if you're just posting and posting and posting it and you get like 40 videos, then they know what you're all about, because if you have a video hit, it's something to go back to. You can also repurpose your stuff at first, especially nobody's seeing it. So it doesn't matter if you're posting it over and over again. But I think just like having the consistency and the willpower to stick to it, it's going to pay off for you. It's when you're like, thinking, oh, I'm terrible because nobody's liking it. Well, nobody's seeing it, so it's not on you, right? It doesn't, like, it's nothing you're doing. You just gotta keep going, and eventually it will hit. But it's when you're wishy-washy or don't post for a week or whatever. Once you have an established following and you've grown, you can be a lot more relaxed in your efforts. You maybe don't have to post every day, or sometimes I don't even post every week on TikTok. And you are going to maybe pay a little bit of repercussions those first couple of posts back, but it can be a lot more relaxed because you are established. But when you're first starting out, you've really just got to be consistent about it.
I hope whoever's listening will like pause and rewind and listen to what you said again, maybe even like 2 or 3 times. That was so much good content, information, mindset. That was just gold. I love how you said to detach from the results, because so many people take it personally. And you mentioned it perfectly across the board for your sales, your views, your likes. People internalize that and say, okay, this post flopped. This didn't do good. I'm not good enough. So now I'm not going to show up again. And it's like this spiral that happens from like one, Instagram or TikTok post that really doesn't mean anything about you. And like you said, get up and try again and just keep showing up. Be consistent instead of being wishy-washy and only showing up when things are good. How do you actually show up and detach from the results and show up regardless? So I know you mentioned willpower and consistency. which I think is something that people kind of struggle with. So, where do you think your willpower and consistency really comes from? How did you build those habits, or how did you learn to really detach from the results yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it takes work. It's not just going to come easily, especially if all you've known is attaching yourself to those results, right? And I think that like it's a really common thing for us to take everything personally, but you are not your business. And as much as it's probably a personal brand for you, you are still not your business. Like you are a whole person. You are worthy of anything that you want, and you don't have to like feed into like all the negative self-talk that happens in your head or from anybody else, because that's an important thing to remember too, is that we all want to grow our social media, we all want to have more exposure and all this, but with that comes the other part of it, which is the trolls and the negative comments and all of those things that happen. And I think that in order to be able to handle those, you also have to learn how to handle your own self-talk. And I think that that is probably most important to start with, because as you grow, if I kind of feel like our own self-talk is more damaging than what anybody else would say to us. So you're better off starting there and starting with detaching from those things so that when you do grow and you do become more popular, the other people are just like whatever, you can just wave them off. But I mean, I really think it just comes from like just a knowing inside and believing, that you are worthy and good and everything you do is like for a reason or for a purpose, and that if it doesn't gain results, that it's fine because you're coming from like a true place.
Yeah. And I talk a little bit about spirituality and like the woo woo side of things on the podcast. So, one thing that I mentioned a couple times is the universe, or whoever you believe in, God, source, but the universe knows when you're ready and the universe responds when you're ready. So, when you're talking about like Instagram growth and TikTok, and not only the awesome benefits of it, of more exposure, more sales, more community, more people, there's also the flip side of trolls and people leaving nasty comments, which I heard happens like so much more on TikTok than it does on Instagram. But a lot of that too is, are you ready for that? Like a lot of people want to have massive growth on Instagram, but with more eyeballs comes more opinions. And are you really able to handle those opinions? Are you able to brush it off? Are you able to not take it personally? So everything that you've said, I think is so interesting because it really aligns with, in order to truly grow on Instagram, on TikTok, in order to truly grow your business, a lot of it is the work that's beneath the surface and doing that work so you're truly ready for the growth and the good and the bad and the ugly and the great and the blood, sweat, and tears that comes with it. I definitely want to circle back a little bit to like Instagram and TikTok specifically, but we're kind of on this spiritual train, so I want to keep this going. Are there any other spiritual ways that you really rely on for growing your business? I know we talked about, believing that everything is for a purpose, for a reason, knowing that your results are not you, but are there any other spiritual practices or mindset shifts that you really rely on for your business?
Well, I think that, I mean, I rely heavily on like my spirituality for my business. And in some ways, they're like very much the same thing, because I think that I was talking to a friend the other day and we always talk about, spirituality and stuff. And I was just saying like, it's pretty cool that owning a business, especially like personal brand, small business, is like, it's such a like Kickstarter, like rocket fuel for your spiritual growth, because like all these things happen to you at more rapid fire succession than they would in your like just normal everyday life. So you really have got to figure out like how to deal with things and just be like comfortable in your own skin. And so like I just feel that like they're kind of like one and the same. And so everything that I learn for my business like also can translate like to my regular life as far as like building relationships and money mindset and like all of those sort of things. But I think like the most important thing is to believe it's possible. And we can see it's possible in other people. And so the closer that you get to other people, if you see somebody that has what you want, right? They have this successful business, like instead of like thinking or like being jealous, then you're just like thankful that they've come into your world, into your reality, because when you can see that they can do it, then you can do it. And also just trusting the universe that like you would not have that thought, that want, that desire if it weren't possible. The very fact that you have that desire means it is possible. And so like just really truly believing in that and believing in yourself, because we all can do literally whatever we want. The only thing holding us back is ourselves. And so like there aren't any more excuses that are actually valid. They're just like obstacles to work through.
Yeah. But we start to think some of those excuses are so true and so valid, right? That's the tricky part. But once you really get into the spiritual side, which I love how you answered that question, that's really where everything starts to open up. And I have a friend who said that running your own business is the world's best personal development journey. Because when you run your own business, you're going to realize where you struggle, where your mind starts to shut you down to play safe, where you're scared to show up, what you're scared to do, why you're scared to do it. So as soon as you step into this role of, I'm going to own a small business, I want this to be my full-time career, if it's now or if it's later, you're really stepping up to uncover all of the stuff underneath the surface that could potentially hold you down. I love how you said at the core of it, it's really like trusting and believing in yourself. Is there any particular way that you really grow that belief in yourself? Is that something that from childhood you just always knew, whatever I set my mind to, I can do it? Or is this a muscle that you really had to grow? Because I find a lot of people that I talk to, they like truly struggle with that. So walk me through your journey of believing in yourself. Is that something innate? Is that something that you had to cultivate? How did that come about?
No, I definitely think it is like a muscle that you have to work on. And I don't think for some people, maybe it comes more naturally. If I think of believing in myself as far as like my ability to do things that maybe other people would not think are possible, right? So like some of the designs I create, like people are like, oh my God, like how do you even do that? And I think that a lot of it actually comes down to discipline and practice. And I think that people overlook like the actual hard work and dedication that it takes to do things. And when I say hard work, I don't mean like, oh my gosh, you have to work all the time, constantly, whatever. I mean, actually dedicating yourself to the practice that you're trying to do. So whatever your business is, if you're a painter, if you're a candle maker, if you're whatever your product is that you're making, but like really dedicating yourself into like making the best product that you can, making the best packaging that you can, doing the best marketing that you can, but really practicing and learning and doing all those things. And the things that you hate, like outsource them if you can, but like just really the practice of it all, the process of it all, because that's where you're going to learn about yourself. And that's where you're going to learn that it is possible, is in the actual doing and in the actual process. And our brains tend to want to skip over that part and just go for the end goal. And how are you going to believe it's possible when you don't know how to get there? So I think a lot of it is in the actual doing.
Yeah, discipline and practice. That's exactly what you said. And I think that's such a good analogy in terms of how to believe in yourself. Well, if you have the discipline and you show up and practice it and then realize like, hey, I can do hard things. I was able to do this. I set myself up in order to master XYZ, whatever I'm trying to do. Then that just is fuel to believe in yourself for the next hard thing and the next hard thing and the next hard thing. And I love also how you said, like, dedicating yourself to the practice, not only the fun stuff, but maybe the stuff that, as business owners, we have to do. And that's something that I hear a lot with my clients is, A lot of people love the creative side. So I want to hear from you on this because I know your pieces are so creative, and everyone who listens will have to see your beautiful pieces on Instagram at Shop Hillside Studio because they are just so awesome. But talk me through, with having such a creative business, these really intricate polymer clay pieces, how do you create that discipline if it is something that you don't like to do? Is there any like routine or practice or anything you put in place to help you for the business side of running a business?
So I think for so many years, I did everything, right? I did everything in my business. And like as things grew, I quickly tried to get rid of the things that I hated the most. So I know it's not feasible for everybody starting out to be able to have anybody do anything, but I think starting sooner rather than later is going to be a benefit. If you're trying to grow your business and you are still working your full-time job, like how are you going to do your accounting, do your marketing, pack your orders, do all of these things and grow the business, right? So something always has to give. And a lot of times makers in general tend to get to burnout level before they outsource things. And so I would just say it might seem scary to pay an accountant. It might seem scary to have someone do your social media or whatever it is, but like it really will be worth it because that time that it frees up is like so much more valuable. And as being people who use their hands to make things, we tend to always be trading our time for money. And the more things that you can make to where you don't have to do that anymore, the better off you're going to be. And the sooner you can do that, the better off you're going to be. So for many years, like I said, I did everything myself, but the thing I hated the most, the thing that like gave me the most anxiety and just, I mean, I was a wreck at it, was managing the books and keeping everything straight there. So that is the very first thing I outsourced. I started by having somebody help me at the end of the year. And then I was able to and at the time I thought this was really splurging, but have somebody manage it every month. So that was my first thing to get rid of. And I can't tell you how much more mental capacity that gave me just to give up something that probably would have taken 2 hours a month to do because I hated doing it and I was always behind. And so then I was always anxious about it. And it was just like a big constant source of yuck for me. And so outsourcing that, like freeing up that mental capacity, I think was like the first catalyst. And then I started having somebody help me pack orders. And then now I have 4 employees that help me do everything. And it's just amazing. I can concentrate on doing the things that like I really love doing the most, which is creating the intricate patterns. And my assistants can help me with sanding and assembling and shipping orders and running the store and all of those other things. So it takes a while to get there, but if you can think ahead and try to get rid of some of the tasks that just really frustrate you from the start. And it can be as simple as having a virtual assistant that can update your website every time you have a launch or something like that. Simple things like I used to pay someone $20 an hour, but it only cost me like $60 a month for her to update my website every month for my restocks. And it was something that then I didn't have to do anymore.
Yeah. And an overall theme that I'm hearing from you is that your time and your like mental capacity is more valuable, right? It's worth it to outsource for these things that you hate, like accounting, just to get it off of your brain, or those super easy tasks that are done over and over. And I heard you mention packing orders. I heard you mention like sanding your earrings and like probably putting the little spokes and everything on them. I heard you mention the website launches and updating the website. That is such an important part for growing a business because we try to do everything ourselves. And you said it beautifully. It leads to burnout. And then we start to like not really like our business. Then we start to not show up. Then we start to look at our business in a different way because now instead of it being something that we enjoy, we kind of feel like it's this ball and chain that's holding us down because we have accounting on our mind, like for the full year, because we didn't submit our taxes until October, speaking from experience. So I think what you said is so important, just to keep freeing up that space to focus on what we do love to do. And the other reframe that I love that you said is also the point of view on like the full-time job, because this is another example to what you mentioned about Instagram, where look at Instagram as an awesome way to grow your business, but also looking at your full-time job when you're in your full-time job as this awesome cushion that you have. Like, you're not relying on your business for your livelihood. You can actually potentially invest in coaching, invest in a packer, invest in an accountant, because it's not this intense pressure to have this need of like every single dollar that you make is for your rent and your food and your bills, right? So that's another reframe that I love. Is a lot of people also are like, gosh, like, because my full-time job, I can't do what I want to do with my business, when really it's like your full-time job is actually helping you to get set up. And you and I both have similar stories of how we worked full-time, built our businesses up, and then we finally left. So I think that is just something that I wanted to elaborate further on too, is full-time job, having a source of income, although it potentially reduces the amount of time that you could spend on your business, it actually gives you the monetary, more of that potential monetary freedom to hire people to help you. So you're still progressing while you are building up to that time to leave your full-time job. So did you hire some of these people like the accountant when you were at your full-time job, or was this something afterwards?
Yeah, when I was still at my full-time job, I hired an accountant and I hired someone to help me pack orders, and I hired a virtual assistant. So I had three people before, and then I was very well set up once I decided to quit my job. Honestly, I should have quit way earlier. I was very guilty of not listening to the signs from the universe until she made it so miserable for me to be at that job anymore. But yeah, I mean, having, like you said, having that cushion of that financial cushion to be able to create my business how I wanted it instead of from this desperation point is super important. And that like kind of ties into like how money mindset could be this like double-edged sword, right? Because the more you think about your money problems, like what you concentrate on is what your reality is, right? So like if you are having money problems, it becomes really hard not to always think about your money problems, right? And so it is a nice thing to add into the mix to where you don't feel desperate for sales. You don't feel, so even if like you have to get a part-time job or something, like sometimes that can really be beneficial and like clearing up the muddiness in your brain around money. Is just having like a little bit like extra cushion there so you don't have to like constantly be thinking of it. I will say on the caveat to that is that like the mental capacity thing, like when I left my job, I was making more money on my jewelry business than I was in my full-time job. And it was really hard for me to leave because then I felt like I was giving up nearly half my income, right?
Mhm.
And so like there gets to be a point to where you're like, okay, well, now I'm giving up all this money because now I have to quit my job. But just the pure space it left in my brain to no longer have to worry about that job anymore, I was able to just get so much more done and work like a lot smarter instead of being always like cramped for time and worried about time and all this other stuff and taking care of my family. And so I was able to get back up to that point within like 2 or 3 months. So it's just like, you got to find the sweet spot, I guess, but also just, I think like we talked about earlier with Instagram, but just being like super grateful about whatever is in your life right now is going to get you like so far.
Yeah. And I wish, hearing how you structured your business before you left your full-time job, That is like one of my biggest regrets, that I didn't do exactly what you said. I wish, looking back when I had my full-time job, which everything happens for a reason. So I'm grateful for how it did, but just retrospectively, and when I talk to people who are in full-time positions right now, I wish when I was at my full-time job, I would have built my business like a machine, had a packer, had a VA, exactly like you're saying, had the accountant figured out, to the point that it was running so smoothly without me having to spend 40, 50, 60 hours on it, building it into a machine by hiring people, by leveraging others, by getting help on the easy tasks. So then when I left my full-time job, it would be running smoothly, like you said. What I did was the inverse. I tried to like make as much money as possible with my small business so then I could justify leaving. So I didn't invest in anything. But then when I actually left my full-time job, it was still like starting from square one without having the structure, infrastructure, testing, like knowing what would actually work. So it's awesome to hear your side of it, of how you built it. And when you left, it was like mental capacity is open to just keep expanding more and more and more and more. So whenever I work with my clients, I have one client, Diana, she's working part-time right now. And I'm like, if it takes reinvesting and building this machine, it's so worth it, because you're building something for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. It's not just about making a profit this month. It's this long-term vision that we have to have for the end goal of what we want to achieve with our business. So I appreciate how you brought us along that journey. But I do want to segue a little bit back to Instagram and TikTok, because I know this is a big topic for a lot of people. A couple of things that you mentioned about what type of content you share. So I heard you mention educating, showing the process of your designs for your polymer clay earrings. I also heard you mention in the stories, you really focus on building relationships. So giving a ton of good content. I think you mentioned like how to style the earrings and how they can give you confidence, things like that. Were there any other main content pillars that you really focus on Instagram or TikTok? Or would you say the education piece, showing the process and giving that value in terms of how these earrings build confidence, is that majority of what you would post on those platforms?
Yeah, I mean, I think now the majority of what I post is just kind of satisfying videos to watch. I honestly don't focus on selling my stuff as much, because I think that like just sharing my process kind of sells it. And I do make sure in sharing my process that I share what the earrings look like on, or things like that. I'm not just sharing the process and showing a pair of earrings sitting on a desk. So I do think it's very important when you're sharing these behind the scenes and sharing things like that, that you do share what your product is meant to do and be, and things like that, because I think it's often forgotten about. You need to share your product how it's meant to be used.
Yeah.
But I think that like for the most part, that's what I concentrate on. And I know full well that probably 50% of my followers are just there to watch my videos. They're probably not going to buy any earrings from me, but what they are going to do is they're going to share my videos, and they're going to share them in person with people. They're going to talk about me to other people. They're going to share them on their stories, and more people are going to continue to see that, because I'm sharing something that's of value to everybody and not just to the people that want to buy my products.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's it right there, is giving that value and letting go of the expectation of I'm only posting this to get sales, but just posting it because people will love it. It shows your process, it shows the end product, it has value, but letting go, similar to what we said right at the beginning, detaching from results. Like if 50% of my followers don't buy a pair of earrings, that's fine. Like I'm still giving them value and I love what I'm sharing with them. So a lot of what you've been talking about today is really just reframing the mindset around Instagram to help yourself and people who are listening to show up and to continue to show up. Do you have any tips? I know you mentioned you like to share the earrings on, which I think is so important, to see the physical experience of our products. Do you have any other tips on how to really monetize Instagram or TikTok? Anything that you found that worked for you with these massive followings?
Mostly it's just using like the tools that you're given. So I think if I had to guess, most of the people that watch your stories are probably going to be your customers.
Yeah.
And so yes, you want to build relationships with them, but you don't want it to be just, oh, I'm watching her stories because she's funny, right? So you need to definitely mix in like your product usage, like how you use it, reviews from your customers, like whatever else you can add into it, like when you're doing sales or specials or when you're launching new items. Things like that all need to be worked in there and figure out how to intertwine your personality with that stuff. Because as much as I love people watching my feed just to watch the videos, I am also there to sell a product, right? And so I think that stories are the best place to do the selling because those are the people that like really love you and trust you and like want to buy from you.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That's exactly how I teach it with my clients too, is like the feed is where you're going to get more of the value and just show you're an expert, show the process, show how it's made. But when you get to your stories, that's where you sell. That's where you share how to use it, the benefits of it, why they should buy it, the experience that they get. So I love hearing the similarities with what you're saying on this too. Do you have any tips in terms of how to actually plan your content? This is a question I get, and I'm not like a big content planner, but when you think about showing up on Instagram and TikTok and what you're going to talk about, what you're going to post, what you're going to share about in the stories, do you have any concrete plan, or do you more of go with the flow, what you're inspired by at that moment?
So I typically don't like to plan my stuff out either, because I am a big proponent of like the things I share, I want to be passionate about, right? And I feel like sometimes if you plan too far out in advance, you're like, oh, I thought about this 20 days ago and I don't really give a crap about it now, you know?
Yeah.
And so for some people that works really well. But for me, I like to be more in the moment. Now, I will say what I do is I'm always thinking of stuff in a video. So when I'm making, I don't sit down and film my whole process. That would not be enjoyable to me. But what I do is I know which parts of my process are the most exciting or the most eye-catching or whatever. So I film 15-second clips all the time because I know I can put them together and form some sort of video with it. So I am always kind of thinking about the content like in that way. I do like to keep a folder on my phone, and as well as like I'm always texting myself TikToks and reels, and then I'll put in the text like how I want to make this my own. Like, oh, this gave me an idea to do whatever. And I find that that's an easier way for me to keep track of things rather than trying to save it in the app. And then you're like, why did I save this? What was this for? Because then I have my own notes to it, and like it's in my own, text message with myself. So those are ways that I like sort of like will keep track of things like that. And I know, I guess I know by now which parts of my process are good and exciting or whatever. But I think mostly it's just like capturing these little bits and pieces that I'm like, oh, that'd be fun to share, or oh, I can use that later or whatever. So I guess my biggest tip is to get a phone with a lot of storage on it.
Oh my God. I love it. I'm like one of those people where I get the messages, your iCloud hasn't been updated in like 300 days. I'm like, oh my God, if my phone, knock on wood, if something happens, I'm going to be so screwed. I love hearing those tips from you though. I work in a very similar fashion, and I get people who ask that question pretty frequently. But what you said so eloquently is you don't like to plan because you like to have passion behind what you share. And when you're a little bit more in the moment, you have some structure around it in terms of ideas that you've seen on other people's reels and TikToks, or clips that you've already documented when you're making the process, but then having more of the actual creation of it a little bit more in the moment when you're inspired, something that like you're really passionate about at that moment in time. So I think that's a good way of balancing both structure, but also not being too structured. So I know a lot of people on the small business, artist, creative side, structure isn't their like most favorite thing. So hearing that balance is awesome to have your feedback on. I think that's a great way to look at it.
I was just going to say, I think also that like we tend to like make up all these rules for how we're supposed to do. I need to have 30 days of content planned out, or I have to post every single day, or all these rules that like we've heard or we make up for ourselves, and they make it not fun anymore. And so I think that whatever you can do to make it fun and interesting for yourself, you're going to have the most success with. I personally love videos, so that's what I'm going to stick with, right? And you should probably do some videos because that's where we're moving towards. You know what I mean? So you need to incorporate some of them, but you don't have to make everything about videos. If your customers are still responding to your carousel posts or your single posts or whatever it might be, or you just love doing stories and you barely post on your feed. Like if that's where your customer is, it's totally fine. If that's where you enjoy being, your customer is probably going to find you there. And so just making it fun, like stop putting all these rules on yourself. You don't have to post every day. You don't have to post at a certain time every day. Like
Yep.
you can listen to like the Instagram experts are everywhere now, and they're all telling you all this crazy stuff, in my opinion. And if you just do what you want and have fun with it and make it have some point, right? Like you don't want to just post random stuff, but like just have the most fun you can have while doing this task. And like, it's always going to end up better for you.
Yeah. And find a way to make it fun, right? Because I think some people might be like, oh, but I just hate showing my face on stories. I hate showing my face on reels. Part of it is, if there's stuff that you hate, let's find a way to outsource if it's required. But part of it too is how do you shift your perspective and how do you make it fun? How do you find a way for it to actually be fun for you for some things that truly are required? And this goes back to what you mentioned earlier of the attention that you put behind the work that you're doing. And I find it so interesting that if you are posting something on Instagram and there's a lot of like resistance, a lot of, oh, I don't really want to do this, or oh my gosh, like this isn't going to get a lot of likes, I'm wasting my time. If you show up with that sort of attention about Instagram, it's not going to perform as well. And your customers can pick up on that too. Like followers can totally pick up on if it's a reel that was like half-assedly put together. Followers can pick up on if you're posting a story and you like don't want to be there and you're just showing up by like the grit of your teeth just because. So when you find a way to truly make it fun, when you find a way to show up, when you find a way to make it exciting, that shows up on a subconscious level. The tone that you use on your stories, the words that you use on your posts, the quality of the content that you put out there. So all of what we've been talking about today on how to grow your business, get more traction on Instagram, get more traction on TikTok is like mindset related. It's showing up with a positive mindset.
It totally is. And like every interaction that you have with anybody ever is an energy exchange. Even posting on social media is an energy exchange. So what energy are you putting out there for your customers to pick up? They're going to pick it up.
Yeah.
Consciously or subconsciously, they're going to pick it up. So if you're hating everything you're doing, it's not going to be good for you. So if you just look at everything, like what kind of energy do you want to put out there? Like, because you're putting it into your post, you're putting it into your products one way or the other. So you might as well be intentional and a little free with, the energy that you're giving out.
Yeah. Did you ever struggle with, as your profiles grew to these crazy massive amounts, do you ever struggle with fear of judgment, of scared to post something in case people don't like it, or in case it doesn't perform as well as you want? Is that something that you've struggled with, or is this go back to like the discipline that you've created that you don't let that really get to you?
I think I probably struggled more in the beginning. Now, I'll say I tend to create my art from a more soul level place. And because of that, I don't like attach like my worth on it. Like I love it, and that's kind of all that matters to me. And so if somebody doesn't like the work that I put out there, I don't really care. But when it comes to me talking or things that are more like me, if I'm sharing, bits about my personality or my family or whatever it might be, I do tend to have a harder time sometimes releasing that judgment of other people. And so I think that like I can definitely relate to people being scared to post their work, because I think they're coming from a place that's more, they're attaching their work like to themselves entirely. And yeah, it can be hard. It can be really hard. But also if you look at it as that, like every obstacle, everything that's like hard that comes in our way is just there to teach you something. So if I am triggered by something, I know I need to dig a little deeper into that. So if somebody is talking about my work or talking about me in some way, then I'm just like, okay, well, they keep giving me unsolicited advice and I'd like to smash my phone right now. Maybe I should look at that. And so it's just like an area that like, that like, it's either a mirror, it's showing you something about yourself, or it's showing you something that like maybe you need to work a little bit more on. So I think everything for me is like a game. Like, how can I make this the best that I can? And that's including myself. Yeah, that's just kind of how I look at it.
Yeah. And I think it shows that your soul is in your work, not only in your polymer clay earrings, but how you show up on Instagram, the content you put out, like you can tell that your soul is in it. And when you put your soul behind something like that and you truly believe in it and believe in the impact, then you have these awesome results to show for it. So you're like living, breathing proof of all that is possible when you believe in yourself, when you show up and really claim your worth and know that you have a great product and that you want to share it into the hands of so many people. So it's awesome to hear your story of how you've gotten to where you are. Do you have any other final tips you want to share? This is going to be super generic, so you can take this in any way, either for growing a business, starting a business, spirituality in business, anything else that you want to share to those that are listening?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just to go for it. If you have these desires, you have these dreams, like just go for it. Like the more you can detach from what anybody else thinks, the better off you're going to be. And the more you do it, the easier it is to detach. So
Mm.
you're not going to be able to detach if you don't put yourself out there and expose yourself to those things. You just are going to be able to get over it much quicker and much easier. Like the more you do it, and being afraid doesn't mean you shouldn't do something. In a lot of cases, it means you should do it.
Mm.
So just go for it. Take the action, take one small action towards it, and it'll lead you to another action and another action and another action until one day you wake up and you're like, wow, I did it.
Yeah, I love it. Oh my gosh, that's so inspiring. And I appreciate what you've shared with us so much today. I would love to just end with learning a little bit more about some of the programs you offer, where people can find you. I know you have some exciting stuff in the pipeline, so bring us up to speed on all that you have going on.
Yeah, well, you can find me. Instagram is my favorite place to hang out. I'm at Shop Hillside Studio on Instagram. And I'm also on Facebook and TikTok. If you just search Hillside Studio, you'll find me in those places. I'm also getting ready to launch, hopefully in the next month or so, a new polymer clay earrings made easy course that'll be for everyone. So I'm really excited about that. I have a Facebook group called the Studio Squad, and you can find that. You can search on Facebook, or you can click the link in my Instagram bio. It'll take you there. But that is a polymer clay Facebook group. And then sometime in the next few months, I'll be putting together a program all about how to run a business from a soul level place, creating your art for the whole world. So stay tuned for that.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And I love how this conversation really fits into that soul passion of making your products. And I'm excited for everything that you have to come. I will make sure to link your handle, all of the awesome links that you mentioned in the shop notes. So anyone who's listening is interested, they can easily find you. I just want to say thank you so much. It was so awesome talking to you more, hearing about your business, how you grew your business, where you are now, where you started. So thank you so much, Kristen. It's been a pleasure to have you, and I'm sure that we will be talking soon. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Monica. I really enjoyed this conversation.